For so many of us, as Ramadan gets closer, there's this mix of excitement, but also a little bit of pressure, right? We start thinking about schedules, rules, what we need to accomplish. But what if we completely reframed that? In this explainer, we're going to look at Ramadan not just as a month of obligations, but as this profound blueprint for building a resilient heart, a time for some real, deep, mental and spiritual healing. And right at the very heart of this journey is an incredible promise. Look, when God says something twice in the Quran, back to back, it's a huge signal to pay attention. And notice it doesn't say, after hardship comes ease. It says, with it. The ease is literally tucked inside the difficulty itself. This is our theme, finding hope, especially when things feel completely overwhelming.
So, if you're already feeling a little anxious about doing Ramadan right, or doing enough, let's just flip that script. This month is actually designed to be a powerful tool for your mental health. In fact, research has shown that the practices of Ramadan, like the fasting, the community that increase connection to God, can seriously reduce feelings of anxiety and depression. It's a month that's literally built for healing.
Okay, so to really get how this healing works, we're going to dive into some timeless case studies on mental strength, straight from the Quran. And these aren't just stories from long ago. They are powerful, practical examples of how faith gives you a framework to navigate really intense emotions.
Let's start with a situation that is just terrifying. I want you to imagine you are the mother of Moses, or Musa. A tyrant has ordered every single newborn boy to be killed, and your only option to save your son is to put him in a basket and just let him go down a river. Can you even imagine the level of anxiety she must have been feeling? It's almost unthinkable.
And this is where the Quran gives us this stunning psychological detail. It tells us her anxiety was so bad, so overwhelming, that she was literally on the verge of screaming out and revealing everything, which would have undone the very act meant to save him. She was at her breaking point. And that's when something incredible happened.
The Quran uses this absolutely beautiful phrase. It says that God tied over her heart. It's this idea of a spiritual comfort, an emotional reassurance that just comes down and quiets that internal storm of anxiety. It's a kind of calm that makes no logical sense in the middle of chaos, but it's what allows you to think clearly and do what needs to be done. And this just perfectly shows the difference between our normal biological programming and a spiritual one. Biology gives us fight, freeze, or fright, right? We panic, we get paralyzed by fear. But faith offers a whole other path. Instead of being consumed by that fear, the heart is reassured, the spirit is quieted, and somehow you find the strength to push through. All right, now let's build on that concept with another amazing case study. Asya, the wife of the Pharaoh himself. Now her story is about resilience, not just against one scary moment, but against constant, systemic, crushing pressure. I mean, she lived in the absolute epicenter of tyranny and disbelief, and yet she held on to her faith. Now listen to her prayer and just notice her focus. As Pharaoh is literally torturing her for her beliefs, she doesn't pray for the pain to stop. She prays for her ultimate destination. Her prayer, her dua, shows this incredible conviction. She could see past the horror of the moment to her real home with God. And this idea of perspective, it is so critical. Asya completely reframed her reality. And what's wild is that modern research totally backs this up. A study on Muslims during the pandemic found that those who saw what was happening as a test from God had way better mental health outcomes, less anxiety, less depression, than those who saw it as a punishment. It's a powerful, powerful mental shift.
Okay, so we've looked at the spiritual and the psychological blueprint for resilience. Now the big question is, how do we take all that inspiration and turn it into real, concrete action this Ramadan? It's time for us to become the architects of our own spiritual plan. See, this isn't about just letting the month happen to you. It's about being intentional. So how do we actually do that? How do we go from vague ideas like, I want to have a good Ramadan, to a real structured plan for growth? Well, a great place to start is to look at your life as a whole. Don't just focus on one thing. Think about all these key areas: your family and relationships, your prayers and connection to the Quran, your character, your health and what you eat, even how you spend your free time and use social media. Real growth has to be balanced.
And for each of those areas, you can use a really simple 4-step process. First, just envision success. What does a win actually look like? Get specific. Second, define your steps. What exactly are you going to do to get there? Third, and this is key, be real with yourself and identify the threats. What's going to get in your way? And fourth, plan to check in and reevaluate. This is how a wish becomes a real strategy.
Now let's talk about a major obstacle for so many people, especially parents, students, anyone with a ton of responsibilities. It's that feeling of guilt. You feel like you have so much to do that you can't possibly do enough formal worship. Let's tackle that because there are some really compassionate, practical ways around it.
This right here is a total game changer. You have to internalize this. Every single act you do with the right intention is an act of worship. Preparing the evening meal for your family, taking care of your parents, driving your kids around. Those aren't distractions from worship. They are a form of worship. When you really get that, the guilt just starts to melt away.
So let's get creative. If you can't sit down and read the Quran for an hour straight, that's okay. Listen to it while you're driving or doing the dishes. Dedicate the time you're chopping vegetables to remembering God. If you're overwhelmed by cooking every single night, why not organize a meal swap with a couple of friends? These little tweaks can free up so much time and energy. And remember, every single one of those acts with the right intention is rewarded. All right, to finish up, let's equip you with a quick toolkit, some practical resources to help you really hit the ground running this month. First off, don't let meal planning become another source of stress. Here are just a few simple, nutritious ideas for suhoor and iftar. The goal here is sustainable energy, not super complicated recipes. Simple things like oatmeal, a smoothie, or a hearty lentil bolognese can make all the difference. And while you're feeding your body, make sure you're feeding your heart and mind too. There's so many amazing resources out there. Check out podcasts from places like Yaqeen Institute. Listen to scholars and speakers that really speak to you. There are even apps like Qariya, which feature amazing female Quran reciters. Find what inspires you and make it part of your day.
And this brings us right back to where we started. Modern psychology now has a term for what people of faith have understood for centuries: post-traumatic growth. It's this idea that you can go through something incredibly difficult and not just heal, but actually emerge from it stronger, more compassionate, with a deeper sense of purpose. Hardship can literally be a catalyst for growth.
So ultimately, Ramadan is a training ground. It's like a 30-day spiritual and mental boot camp, and it's designed to strengthen your heart. So the real question for all of us isn't if we'll face hardship, because we will. The question is, how will you use this month to train your heart, to find that ease that God has already promised is there? How will you build your resilient heart this year?